Right.
All right, it's recording. Welcome as people begin to trickle in. We've got Shay and Geraldine already here ready to go. We're very excited. We are at a record-breaking virtual power lunch this month. We've never had over 150 registrants, and we have done it. So I just thank you both so much for your willingness to address this really important topic. And it's just a perfect Black History Month here at Her Plan for us. So thank you so much. We're going to give everybody a few minutes to trickle in. Feel free, if you all would like, as you do come in, to put in the chat your organization website if you want to just share your organization's website and the state or states you operate in. That will help us all get to know each other a little bit. And I just love the variety of providers that are in the Her Plan network, because we have our wonderful pregnancy help orgs, and then we have our more non-traditional providers like food banks or doctors' clinics or thrift stores that might not be traditionally thought of as pro-life pregnancy help, but you are because you are doing wonderful services that can help pregnant and parenting women and families. So thank you so much for being here. All right, yes, we got work in the chat. Make sure it's going to everyone. If you want to just send me a message, you can send that to me as the host. And I'll be monitoring both the Q&A box and the chat box as we go through today. So feel free to put questions throughout. Anytime you think of a question, just go ahead and type it in the chat box or the Q&A box, and I'll moderate that at the end. So don't feel like you have to wait at the end to get your thought or question or comment out. Great to see so many different places. We've got Alabama, we've got North Carolina, we've got Georgia, we've got Texas. Her plan is now up to 6 state coordinator states. And by that, we mean our state coordinator states are those that have a full-time state coordinator working in the state and really devoting themselves to the state and to networking there. So we have Texas, we have West Virginia, we have Georgia, we've got part-time coverage in Mississippi, and we have a wonderful new directory analyst in Tennessee. So if you don't yet know your state coordinator who's just devoted herself to your state, please let me know, and I'd love to introduce you if you're in one of the states I just mentioned. And if you at all need to contact Her Plan anytime, you can contact us at info@herplan.org. You can use that email whether you have a question or a comment, or if you even want to update something on your directory listing, feel free to let us know that way as well. Okay, I love reading about all these wonderful ministries and organizations and what you do and where you're from. This is very exciting. As we're all getting organized here, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just show a little bit about the Her Plan directory so you can see some of our updates and be reminded of what we do. So let me just share my screen. So if you go to directory.herplan.org, that's the place to go for your landing page that can then explain the different categories of care on our directory. So as I mentioned, we have lots of pregnancy help organizations like pregnancy centers and maternity homes and adoption agencies. And then we also have additional kinds of providers. We've got health and well-being, from medical OBGYNs to lactation consultants to doctors and dentists. We have financial assistance, work, and education, which is our category of the month. So we're going to be focusing on that today. And then we've got material or legal support, which covers basic needs as well as transportation and legal assistance. We have recovery and mental health. We have prenatal diagnosis, and then we have care for children. So if you select one of those categories of care, you can go straight to the map and you see it selected all the applicable subcategories for that category of care. And then you can add filters onto it. So I mentioned that we have recently published Tennessee. and recently hired our state coordinator for Tennessee. So you can start to see the different providers we have in Tennessee and how we're adding more. We've got our initial directories up in 12 states, but those are only initial. So we really want to grow them, and we need your help to do so. So if you have ideas for who else we should invite to be a part of our network, please email us at info@herplan.org. You can also just go to herplan.org like I'm doing right now, and there's buttons on the top to search the directory, to enroll in the directory if you want to share that with your other organizations that you would like to recommend. And then if you want to tell us about a great organization you know in your community, you can use this recommendations form. So whether it's one organization or multiple, you can even attach a file. We'd love to hear from you so we can grow our directory in your area. So with that, I will just remind everyone that if you don't yet see yourself on this map, that probably means you've accepted our invitation to be part of Her Plan, but are still in our process of just getting through compliance and answering some questions to make sure you can be on the map, because we do vet our providers to ensure high quality for all of you. So if you don't see yourself and aren't sure why you're not yet over that finish line, please do email us at info@herplan.org, and I'll have a directory analyst reach out to you and make sure we can get that pin published soon. And we are very excited to be announcing that our 12 states are going to explode. We're publishing many more states next week, so that may also be why you don't yet see yourself. But do take a look, and no harm in writing into us anytime at info@herplan.org, just to make sure we have all your details. And if you see yourself on the map but would like to make a correction, likewise, you can go to info@herplan.org and email me, or you can just go here right to your listing provider profile page and hit provide feedback, and that comes to us as well. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our wonderful guests from the Chalmers Center, Shay and Geraldine. Thank you so much for being here. This is a record-breaking power lunch. This topic has really resonated with everyone. To have the Chalmers Center come and talk at Black History Month about our category of care of financial assistance, work, or education. So I'm going to let you two tell our wonderful audience a little more about yourselves, and we just can't wait to hear from you.
Wow. Well, we are really just blown away and honored to be here. Thank you so much to Cheney for kind of opening up the doors and making this opportunity available to us to share. As Cheney has said, we're from the Chalmers Center. So I don't know how many people have heard of the Chalmers Center, but maybe you've heard of the book When Helping Hurts. We're the When Helping Hurts people. And we do a lot around helping God's people and in churches and in nonprofit organizations understand poverty differently. And so we do a lot of equipping of ministries who are on the front line, like you guys. Shay and I are privileged to be leaders over two of kind of the main programs at the Chalmers Center for U.S. focused ministries. So financial education. I oversee faith and finances, our financial literacy curriculum. And Shay oversees work life as part of our jobs training ministry. And so we have these are areas that we're very passionate about. And so we're excited about ways that you guys who are together in this network are wanting to help moms thrive and grow and keep their families together. But Cheney's given us a really unique opportunity. We don't usually talk about this intersection of our personal lives and who we are as African-American women in the context of these broader programs. And so it's we don't take it lightly. We're very honored to be here. And yeah, we're looking forward to this conversation today. And so our goal is to get through a couple of things that we want to put out there, some stories, some principles for you to think about, but then end at enough time for you all to also be able to answer some questions. So before we ask you our first question, let me just kind of summarize by saying everything that we talk about and everything that the foundation on which we kind of will be building from today is from this big idea that poverty isn't just a material problem. So you can't just solve it with material transactions. That's kind of the foundational understanding of everything we do at the Chalmers Center. So just keep that big idea in mind. Poverty isn't strictly a material problem, so you can't solve it with just material transactions. I've been talking a bit. Let me hand it over to my sister, Shay. I will say I'm Geraldine. I'm a mom, a wife. I have a couple of kids, one in high school, one in middle school. I've been with the Chalmers Center about going on 13 years. And I am so delighted that I get to work with my friend and my sister, Shay. So Shay, say a bit about yourself, and then let's put our question out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Geraldine. Thank you, Cheney, for the opportunity to speak to your audience today. Well, I am Shay Bassett, newlywed of 1 full year. Yay, for the newlyweds in the audience today. I am privileged to serve in the role as the Director of U.S. Jobs Ministry alongside my sister, Geraldine, who just happens to be my boss, and I just love that. And so thank you. Thank you. Joan said congratulations. Thank you, Joan. I've been with the Chalmers Center now almost 3 years. We're rounding up to the 3rd year, and I'm really excited about what God is doing in and through our organization. So now we have a question for you, the audience. We want you to weigh in. So in a word or a phrase, tell us in the chat, how does your experience with trauma shape the work you do? So in a word or a phrase, quickly chat us. Tell us, how does your experience with trauma shape the work you do? All right, thank you. Is that Venetia? Thank you. Oh, I love it. They're coming in. I see it. My testimony deeply creates a passion for compassion. I see compassion embolden, motivates, brings compassion. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love that. Feel more empathetic. Structure, wearing the shoes, appreciate and love others. Wisdom and grace brings compassion, motivates. I love that. Relatability. Great. I love that. Trauma-informed care, motivating, offer choices, helps me be sensitive to their feelings and needs unspoken. It inspires it. Bias, stereotypes. Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much. We know that this work isn't easy, and it's oftentimes very laborious to see women come in and day out who are sometimes in a crisis situation, but grateful to know that, and we understand that the journey is the reward. Grateful to know that you are being the hands and feet on the ground, the boots on the ground in your context. So thank you for that. So Geraldine, you're getting ready to introduce our first story.
Yeah, this is a dedication. Since it's Black History Month, I don't know how many history buffs there are out there, but I get my coworkers know I get really geeked out about finding little known facts during all year long, really. But Black History Month is an opportunity, and so I actually want to dedicate our conversation today to African American mothers of the past. This little piece of American history is one of those finds that was dug up in, I think, a yard sale or something, and authenticated by historians. But I'm going to read what it says on the sack. My great-grandmother Rose, mother of Ashley, gave her this sack when she was sold at age 9 in South Carolina. It held a tattered dress, 3 handfuls of pecans, a braid of Rose's hair. Told her it'd be filled with my love always. She never saw her again. Ashley is my grandmother. This was sewed by Ruth Middleton in 1921. So this is just a plain flour sack. We would not have any idea who Rose was if it was not for the fact that, you know, I love this woman's creativity and resilience, right? So you just imagine it's 1850. It's every mother's worst nightmare. She has just a few minutes. She knows they're coming for her child. She knows she's probably never going to see her child again. She is searching around, looking for what are ways that I can send my child away from me with my love. So she gives her some tangible food for the journey, because, every mom wants to know, are you going to feed my child? She gives her a memento, a little lock of her hair. That's all she has. The one dress to cover herself. But the thing that she fills up the bag with the rest of the way is her love. Her love. Like, I want you to know wherever you go, child, that you are loved. And so I tear up every time I see this, every time I read this, and every time I think about this. But I want our conversation to be grounded in as a dedication to all the mothers out there who, with the odds stacked against them, who, couldn't control some of the things that happened to them or their children, but they did all that they could to love and support their children with what they have. And so, this is not the reality now. Thankfully, this happened on a mass scale. Millions and millions of families went through these traumatic shifts in generations past. And so we know that that's not the reality today, but there are wounds, there are realities that we still see in the African American community that need some supernatural help and healing to be put back together, because you don't have this kind of rupture on a mass scale for generations and generations without seeing some serious implications. And so we just want to dedicate our time and our conversation today to mothers like Rose, who are doing the best that they can. Shay, you have a story as well, my sister. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Great, Geraldine. Thank you so much. And I too love Rosa's story as well. Just to give the audience some context of my story, I am the 10th child born to a 39-year-old woman who had her first child in 1951 and her last child, yours truly, in 1968. I was born into a family trapped in generational poverty. And as a child born into poverty, it opened the doors to all types of trauma. So let me give you a brief idea of some of the outcomes of the trauma I experienced. So one of the outcomes is a marred identity. Imagine being a person who allowed others' opinions of them to become their reality. So over the years, you replay the sound bites that say, you are not, you will not, and you will never. Imagine being a person with sight, but no vision. Your view of life is what you see out of your window. And what you see out of that window is hopelessness, vulnerability, and fear. The second outcome of the trauma that I experienced was mistrust. Mistrust of people who say they want to help you. But the reality in my context was, if I give something to you, I'm coming back later to take something from you. Now, throughout my life, I've taken some hard hits and I've landed in some dark, dark places. For example, finding myself in a position where I'm fighting the state of North Carolina because of a false report made by a jealous neighbor that I was neglecting my children. In the midst of this horrible situation, I realized when I didn't fit inside the box they wanted me to be in, that the people who were supposed to help me conspired against me, and it resulted in me losing my children. My oldest, Martez, was out of my care for 10 years. My youngest, Shanae, on the picture, she was out of my care for 13 years. So at the time that this picture was taken on the screen, Martez was 8 and Shanae was 5. So now I'm dealing with a system comprised of people abusing their power and causing trauma, not just in my life, but now in the lives of my children. And as I reflect on this part of my journey, I realize that my strengths was used as a weapon. against me because I simply didn't fit in the box that other African American mothers that they were serving or going through this situation did. So regardless of my compliance to do what was asked of me, because they held the power, it was to no avail. And that's just a piece of my story. So thank you for listening, thank you for your attention. So Geraldine, if you're ready, let's get into the next phase of the
Yeah.
webinar.
So Cheney, you can come off close down the screen for a bit, and we'll just, Shay and I are just gonna have a conversation and dialogue for a bit. Because I wanted to like dig a little deeper into some of the things that you've shared, Shay. Your story, as we were preparing for this webinar, I was reminded of something that I saw a few years ago. I don't know if anybody's ever participated in a poverty simulation. So it's one of these things where it's supposed to be set up where it's to create the feelings that of empathy with what somebody goes through who is dealing with poverty. And so this particular simulation was set up so that every 10 minutes was like a new week, and you were trying to get through a month. And every week you had 10 minutes, you had to try to deal with your work situations, your kids' school situations, do your grocery shopping, if you had any court-ordered appointments, any of that. So you had so many minutes to try to get through things. And so like as every week went by, every 10 minutes went by, people were getting more and more behind and more frustrated. And so, the simulation did its job, because at the end, we were all to debrief, and there was some lady there, I don't remember which state they had invited, the host had invited people from various stakeholders around the community. And so I don't remember what organization or what government agency she represented, but this lady was just completely triggered. And so she just threw down her folder and said, if this is what it's like, if you're living in poverty, why do you even have kids? Why do these people even having children? They just need to stop. They don't need to be having any more babies. I mean, she just went berserk. And the rest of us were all just kind of like in shock, like, okay. So, those of us who've been in situations where you can kind of tell that people are sending us this vibe that they don't really want you, but they don't really come out and say it. Like, she just came out and said it, like, poor people, you don't deserve the right to be having children. So it was like the room was kind of silent because we didn't really know, what do you do with that? Until one young woman, a young African-American woman, had on a name tag. I think she was from one of the host organizations, just quietly said, well, I'm one of those people that you're talking about. She said, I'm a single mother. I think she had 4 children. And she said, I'm one of those people. She said, for starters, I can tell you that I was 21 and had my second child before anybody even told me about birth control or the concept of consent. So that's one thing. For the other thing, she said, I feel like people in poverty have children for the same reasons other people have children. Like, we have love to give. We want families. And she went on to say other things. She was just as calm, cool, and collected, and just very poised. And as this young mother was talking, like, first I was like, you go, girl, because I'm not sure I could have been that gracious about it. But that exchange has always struck me, because it's clear that this this whole you people dynamic, that African American moms experience this. And I'm married. I have a pretty solidly middle class life. I come up against things from time to time, but I know that it's far more intense for some people. And so, Shay, as we think back through your life and your story, what were some of the external forces in your situation where you, as a mother, felt powerless to stop something from happening to your children or from being the mother you wanted to be?
Oh yeah, Geraldine, that's a great question. Several things come to mind. Actually, one was being born into a family trapped in generational poverty and dealing with all of the traumas that come along with that. And I can relate to the young lady that said consent. And on my part, there was no consent. It was just violation. And so, so being born into a family trapped in generational poverty, dealing with all different levels of trauma, lack of financial resources. If I would have been able to afford the right type of attorney in my case, my outcome wouldn't have been the way that it was, right? So being trapped in that family, going through generational poverty, being violated, your voice was taken, so for many, many years, I fought to have my voice heard. I fought to be seen in the way that I desired to be seen, not as a victim, not as a project, not as someone that I'm here to fix you. You can't fix me because you didn't create me. So those types of things was happening. My relationship with God, I'm trying to figure out how could a loving God allow these horrific things to happen to me throughout my life. And it seems like it was just happening over and over and over and over. And I'm dealing with people in various programs who I thought was supposed to help me, but instead of them really helping me, they cause more trauma. Dealing with the misconceptions, she's a single mom, not even realizing that I was married. I had both of my children while I was married, was a mom that worked every single day because I saw that being modeled in my dad. Even though we were in poverty, my dad got up and worked every single day. My mom and dad had 10 children. Yes, it wasn't 4 or 5 different moms. It was one woman, one man with 10 children. And so just going throughout my life, having to deal with those types of stereotypes or labels or misconceptions, really allowed the individuals who were involved in my case to turn against me. I couldn't speak up for myself. That means I was too aggressive. It was just so many things that were stacked up against me. Had I had the social capital, it would have been a whole lot better. Had I had just one person in one of these organizations to say, you know what, daggone it, this is not right what they're doing to her. I see what they're doing to her. I'm going to help her. If just one person would have done that, it would have made the difference. So, yeah.
Shay, something you said there just, I want to camp out there for a minute. So some of the things that we're talking about today are true of, any mother in poverty, in any marginalized group that feels disempowered, or has experienced generational trauma, but there are some unique stereotypes and misperceptions that Black women in particular run up against, like when we protest too much, or we're seen as loud, we're seen as aggressive. Like there's these categorizations of us uniquely, which I think cause a lot of frustration and a lot of cultural angst and divides. And so there are some consistent responses to trauma that studies are just now starting to really understand and unpack, like I'm sure this audience is aware of ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, that as you pointed out, like many of us are just in our family stories we're carrying forward. But on the national level, like there's kind of these expectations that get put on top of us sometimes as Black women, that what would we like this audience to keep in mind, and to as service providers working with African American moms, what are some of the consistency things that we see that everybody deals with, and let's go a little bit deeper into what are some of the ones that in our work or in our personal lives that we have seen that Black women in particular seem to have to fight against.
Yeah. That's a great question too, Gerald. One is I really want the providers in the audience to know that as a Black woman in America, safety, feeling safe is a real issue for us, right? And I would rather that you be in a place or a posture that you want to hear my story, as opposed to looking at documents, what is written about me. I want you to hear me first before you craft this narrative about me because of what you read on a piece of paper. So in essence, know me before you judge me. Know my story before you give any type of opinion of who you think I am. That's great. Hear me before you help me. I like that, Laura. Being judged as a woman who is aggressive, because like in my context, in my reality, I had to fight. Just fight to be heard, fight to be seen. Just because I'm being vocal about how I feel does not mean that I'm being aggressive. It does not mean that I am in that mad Black woman syndrome world, you know. It doesn't mean that. You know, I loved my children. I worked hard every day. I was an administrative assistant, owned my own home. And because of the picture that had been painted by so many moms who happened to be African American, I feel like they put us all in a box. They grouped us all together, like we didn't have our own separate identities. And because I did not fit in this box, me owning a home was used against me. Me providing a stable environment was used against me. Me knowing how to read was used against me. All of these things that women who are being ushered through the system for neglect of their children, these were some of the preconceived or some of the labels that were put upon them. And so because I didn't fit in any of those categories, now I'm a problem. So it was almost like we're gonna make an example out of you. And so many times when women who are dealing with poverty, who are dealing with low self-esteem, who are constantly playing those sound bites in their head, you won't, you will never, you can't. When we show up to your place of service for your help, some of that harsh external that you see is my defense mechanism, because the last thing I want to do is to allow another person to come in my life and hurt me after I've had the experience that people who say that they want to help me end up hurting me. So that's the last thing that I want another person to do at another place where they're providing a service. Long answer for your question, but yeah.
That's good. Yeah, because so we see women who've experienced trauma making, bad decisions with relationships, sometimes falling into addiction, like all of these things that, sometimes, like the lady in my poverty simulation, see on the outside and like judge you for your situations as though it's all a product of your individual bad choices. Like it's like if you had made better decisions, you wouldn't be here. If you didn't, have that no good boyfriend, if you didn't, weren't addicted, if you were, so, to your point, Shay, not even everybody's in that category, but even those that are, understanding that how people got there is so often not just a result of their own individual systems. Like quite often they are trapped in cycles, in institutions, in systems where they really don't have the power to make choices, or have never been given power and the ability to make choices for themselves. And so they really do feel trapped. One of the things that I see this a lot is in health. Like women who have experienced a lot of trauma have terrible health outcomes, like just struggle with everything. So I was trying to remember a report that I've read recently about name any disease. Black women are like the number one victim of that disease, cancer, heart disease, like all of these things. And so partly it's the generational trauma, like the layers and layers and layers and layers that we now know gets wired into our DNA. If you've never heard Dr. Nadine Burks talk about the medical impact of trauma, you need to look up the TED Talk from Dr. Nadine Burks. So there's things that have happened in our DNA. There's lack of access to health care that has gone along with, like, if you grew up in poverty, you probably didn't have great health care. Like this lady who said, like, nobody even explained to me that birth control was a thing until after I'd had 2 kids. So, just that lack of access, that compounds on top of, mothers who are, so here you are trying to go to your kid's school, trying to, get their learning plan together, trying to deal with their asthma, whatever. But then you get sick. You can't stay out of the hospital. Your weight is causing, diabetes and like all. So it's this negative boomerang cycle that can happen sometimes. And again, it's really easy to judge people for, like, well, it's your fault from the way you eat. Well, yes, the way you eat could be better, but let's not overlook all of these things that are below the iceberg. Like you're seeing the tip and judging for the tip, but there's like layers and layers of additional things down below.
Yeah.
So having said all that, though, I also want to point out that, like Rose, and like you, Black women are incredibly resilient, and survivors. And, with the right kinds of support and input and hope, God really cares about and uses our stories as well. So Shay, first of all, let's talk about how your story ended with you and your children. And then let's get into why you and I are so passionate about what we do and how we do the way we do as programs at Chalmers.
Yeah, it is nothing short of a miracle to be reunited with my children. Like I said earlier on, my son 10 years later, 13 years later for my daughter. Just being able to, it was just like God redeemed the time, and that might be just unfathomable that God could redeem 13 years and 10 years of being away from your children, but he did. And I am happy to report that my son and my daughter and we have such a loving relationship. I'm a grandmother of 5 beautiful grandbabies through my son. And so just being able to overcome that, but also in the midst of that, understanding that there are so many women who are still going through or something similar to what I've gone through, or they're still going through their plight, but to know that there are organizations like the service providers on this call who are out there giving hope, who are out there making sure that they hear the story before they judge. They're hearing the story first, then creating an action plan to help the moms. It's just good to know that there are service providers who have Christian morals and values and look at the women who are coming through their doors as image bearers of Christ. And so just being a part of an organization that's who we are, at the core of who we are. We believe that God's people are his image bearers. And so I'm just grateful to be in a place now that I can be on the other side of the desk, right? Sharing my story when deemed necessary, but also sharing my story so that I can inspire or help somebody else along the way. And if someone asked me, would I change anything in my life, Geraldine, I would tell them absolutely not, because God is a God of economy and everything that happened in my life, every trial, every low place, every dark place, he has used it for his glory. And not only for his glory, he has used it for my story. So I'm grateful for that. We're in a great place.
Amen. Amen. That is, of course, important for people to know that it's never really over. You know, God's story writing it gets harrowing sometimes. You don't know what in the world he's doing his plot lines, but you know, he's always still writing the story. So what are some of the things that, as we said at the beginning, if poverty is not strictly a material problem, then the ways that we're trying to address poverty, and in this application, in the ways that we help moms who are struggling, single moms who are struggling to keep their families together, to care for their children, what are some of the things, like if you were to have a good holistic program that looks at more than just the transactional aspects of giving money, or you know, do you have money or not? What are some of the elements that you know, good programs should have, make sure that they're building in?
One is advocacy. Advocacy is key, because if I've experienced deep levels of trauma like I did, I'm not going to be so apt to open my mouth and share my story. So having someone walking alongside me and advocating for me is going to be key. Relationships that build social capital is also key. Now I know that there are individuals that I can call or tap on the shoulder and say, listen, because of the social capital that I now have, I can help people just because the relationship that I've built with these individuals, whether it be housing, whether it be childcare, whether it be legal counsel. Those are things now that I have in my network. I have people like that in my network. Modeling new behavior and skills. I think that is so key, because we can't model what we've never seen. And I talked earlier about, imagine being a person with sight but no vision. Not until someone came into my life and shared with me, Shay, there are other ways that this can happen, I wouldn't have never known that. I only could see what was right outside my window pane, what was in my immediate environment. And not until someone took the time to walk alongside me and share with me a different way, that's when now the world opened up in a bigger way. So now I'm a person of vision and not just sight. Financial literacy is another thing, because you can't do what you've never seen. It's just that simple. You just can't. If you don't know how to manage your money, if you've never seen that model in your lifetime, you're not going to do it. And so you're going to continue to stay in that cycle of decisions that are poor, right? And then sustaining work. I think sustaining work is one of the key things to get people out of poverty. I know that's what happened for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but I know that was God used a man to give me a job, and just kept allowing me to use my gifts and my talents. And he saw me and not what he read on a piece of paper. And he just allowed me to be me, you know, gave me truth. Not saying that he gave me a pass, spoke truth in love, and it helped shape me, and it helped develop me professionally and personally. And so those are the things that I would say.
Yeah, for sure. The relational capital, that's actually when I met you, is when you had started to get your first job opening, where you were really unleashed to use this power, this gifting, this anointing that you had, and you were starting to rise through the ranks. And so, you know, the curriculum, the faith and finances program that I oversee, and the work life program that you oversee, and you know, all the materials we design at Chalmers are really supposed to help the helpers build those relationships with people. So it really isn't about, people don't make bad decisions with their money just because they don't have the right workbook. Like it's really not a transfer of information. Like you can't stand in a room and give people a stack of papers and say, do all these things and your life will get better. It really has to happen in the context of relationships. And especially, as you all are dealing with mothers who are, if you've had kids, if you've had young kids at home, you know it's very stretching, it's a very challenging, it can be a very lonely a period of time. And so like you really need those mentoring, encouraging, prayer warriors, mothers with more experience. Like, so whatever it is that you're providing, your industry may be, food service, you may be doing healthcare, you may be in a sector that is normally considered more transactional. But one of the things that we're really trying to emphasize here is that transactional doesn't lead to transformation. Like you really have got to figure out ways, how can we go deeper with the helping these moms have the relationships and the connections where the trust can be built, the walls can come down, they can be fully known, they can receive truth, they can be supported, they can feel safe. And every organization is not going to be good at everything, but this is what I love about the network you all have in Her Plan. Like you can work with other service providers, but it is a question to ask yourself, like how much of the way that we're structured and the ways that we're interacting with folks feel like a transaction versus a path to transformation. One of the things that Shay said when we were preparing for this was, people, as someone who experienced, the other side of program services, are your services life-giving or are they just transactional? Are you deepening someone's relationships? Or are you just exacerbating and deepening the trauma experience and just having them relive that same experience over and over again? So wow, I can't believe it. We're pretty much on the time frame we wanted to be on. So this has been an exercise in self-discipline for me to not open up the chat because I see all these great comments popping in. And so, but now's the opportunity. Cheney, would you open it up if there's any questions you all have, either just about resources that Chalmers has to provide or something else about Shay's story or our experiences as African-American moms, just anything that you would like to, dialogue a little bit more about as much as one can dialogue in a webinar. We do like to hear your voices and what's important to you all as well.
Thank you all so much. I just feel that we should take a moment to really reverence the story that Shay has shared with us, and just to thank you both for the way that you are giving a voice to the voiceless and challenging us to be the best we can in our organizations and ministries.
Amen.
So please do put any question that you have either in the Q&A box or the chat. So we'll be looking at both. And so there's one question here about pregnancy resource centers and virtual services. Is that something you would recommend? Does that cut down on the relational aspect, or does it enable it in a new way? Do you have any advice to pregnancy centers or other types of providers in the Her Plan network that might be wondering the same thing?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And how I would have answered it 10 years ago versus how I answer it now. And kind of, I think we're all kind of learning, right? Like sometimes virtual is just the way to go. You can meet more people, you can get more information out there. And this generation does connect, the women who are childbearing now, that generation, it might feel far more relational to them than it would be if you were working with an older population. I would say that there's, yes, use virtual distribution where you can, but also don't rely on that exclusively. In our experiences with people who are attempting to do holistic life skills classes with people on the margins, it can be just a way to keep people at a distance and make sure you chalk up high numbers. The high relational touch, the high trust, the really the going deep and helping people feel like they have an advocate, it's hard to do that only virtually. So in my experience, kind of virtual or social media connections work better if it's a glue that holds you together between times when you are getting together in person. If you never get together in person and you only have the virtual experience, it's like an artificial, it seems to me to be like an artificial substitute for true connection. But that's just my take. Shay, you may.
Yeah, I agree with you. One of the most simplest things an individual can do now, taking it outside of the virtual meeting face to face, is breaking bread. That is a powerful tool that I think a lot of people don't even think about, breaking bread. And remembering my name. Remembering my name is relationship building 101, when you're talking about this context. If you can remember my name, that denotes or sends a message to me that you see me. And when you see me, you can touch my point of pain. When you break bread with me, every time I break bread with you, the wall is going to come down. And I'm going to, at some point, bare my soul to you. But if we are just doing it virtually, I'm not going to get the same energy that I would get if I'm sitting across the table from you. So, yeah.
Wow. Any other tips on relationship building and how to build up that social capital, if you want to say more about that concept?
Yeah, for me, it is time and being willing to be uncomfortable on both ends of the spectrum, because the mom that you're walking alongside, she's going to be uncomfortable, and so are you, but being willing to bring your uncomfortableness to the table together and working through what I grew up to believe or my own biases, and being able to own your biases and your misconceived notions and your ideas of the other person. Being able to share your fears, being able to be vulnerable and transparent, not just sit at the table and listen to my plight, but let me hear your plight, because you have a plight too. And so that's going to help me come out of this place. So, oh, she's a white woman, she don't have any problems. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Because we're women, we're going to have problems. And so being able to do that, but the time and being willing to be uncomfortable, I think, are two of the first things that people have to embrace and be committed to consistency. Because in my context, there wasn't consistency. So I go into relationships automatically thinking this person is going to leave me. And that's the behavior that I display, is because that's my experience. And being able to overlook that, I know you may have never experienced that, but being able to overlook that and see that is key as well. Yeah.
So good. Great question here. What advice do you have for building felt safety for moms coming into a housing program? Even though it's something they have chosen, being in a new environment can be scary. Besides listening to her story, are there any other ways we can be supportive?
Absolutely. Seeing her strengths. I help. This is one thing that I wished, because I was in the housing programs too. I wished I had people who during that interview stage, someone in the room discerning some strengths that I had and reminding me of my strengths and acknowledging my strengths so that I can feel value. That's huge for a mom, to be able to feel valued, and to be seen and to be heard. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that picking up that same thread you laid down before, as far as mutuality. So being able to create an atmosphere of safety and community. And so it's not just a one way, like we're here to give to you, but like also what do you bring to the community, and how do you
Exactly.
that mutuality of like, hey, we're all struggling, we all have something to offer as well. And so like that, it's, you know, what we call around here at Chalmers a potluck mentality instead of a soup kitchen mentality.
Mm.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
I will
Great
also say we
question.
have one more slide that at the very end, we're going to give you like links and stuff for like additional Chalmers resources. So I did see that pop up in the questions.
Great. Do you want to share a little bit more, Geraldine, about the Chalmers resources?
Sure, I can, if you want to go to that slide and show. I will say, so because of this awesome partnership that we're developing with Her Plan, Her Plan providers and network get 25 or 20% off discount for like any of our resources and training. So we've referenced our work readiness program, which is called Work Life, and our financial literacy program, which is called Faith and Finances. But we also have, if you go to chalmers.org/resources, just a number of things that can help either you and your staff, your volunteers, your church partners really think through and unpack this ideas that we've been talking about, poverty not just being a material reality. And so trying to really get deeper into, you know, how do we think about our poverty programs being about reestablishing, restoring relationships. And that includes us as well, us in the list of needy folks, us helpers in the list of needy folks, as well as, you know, members of our community that we're trying to help. So Faith and Finances is accessible through being trained as a facilitator. We're running cohorts throughout the years where you can send facilitators to be certified in this financial literacy program. That is, again, it's not just about the information, it's about how do you sit in a room with people and build up enough trust and safety that they're actually able to talk about their finances and build up and develop new skills in practice together. And then our work life program, you get to have a consultation and a coaching call with Coach Shay to figure out, like, you know, are you ready? Is your site ready? Because there's some other deeper connections you need to make with you know, businesses and other folks in a community. It's more of a community entrenched effort if you wanted to go deeper into work life. Shay, you can say a little bit more about that, but then there's also a virtual training experience for that as well once you're approved.
Yeah. I apologize. I was looking at the questions in the chat.
Go ahead and answer.
What you just said, Geraldine. I am so sorry. I was looking at the questions, man.
They're such great questions.
There are some great questions.
Answer one that you like. We're going to give everybody these slides afterwards. They can have the links.
Yeah, man, I wish we had time to answer some of these questions. I know we're probably out of time.
We got some time. We can go 5 minutes over. Go ahead, Shay. You have one on your heart?
Yeah, so I'm looking at this one, and I'm currently working with an African-American single expectant mama. She is 4 months pregnant and wants to place her baby for adoption. She currently is raising her young son and is working full-time trying to make ends meet. How can I, as a white pregnancy counselor, encourage her and help her best? I want to be Jesus to her without being overbearing or not enough. You know, I get this question a lot when I'm talking to different audiences and different contexts, but one of the things is, as a Black mom who has a baby and probably is struggling right now to make ends meet, her heart probably is that she wants to keep the baby, but in the back of her mind, knowing the struggle is real right now with what she's going through, the giving the baby up for adoption may seem like the best thing at the moment, but having women in my life who've made that decision, having women in my life that I know personally who have made that decision, wished that there was other resources after the baby came, that they walked alongside her as she is raising the baby. It's one thing to say, I'm with you while the baby's in your belly and you not abort the baby. It's a whole nother thing for me to feel like after I've given birth to this baby, now I'm alone. What are we doing to help the mom even when the kid is up to 5 years of age, getting the kid into school, making sure that the trajectory of the plan for the baby is healthy as well as for the mom. And so a lot of times we want a mom to keep the baby, but are you going to be there for the mom after the baby is born and after she's rearing that child? And so I feel like, and I'm not sure of all the services around, but sometimes to me, that's the gap. Like we can do it up to so many months, but then when the child gets past 2 years of age, we don't have any resources for you. Well, I still have the baby. Now, what am I going to do? And so I feel like if we had agencies that would cover that gap period, if you will. And again, I don't know all of the services out there, but I think that would be very helpful. That would be really, really helpful.
Okay, I love your wealth of just experience, and I would add, like, you as an agency have a call and a responsibility as your agency, but the body of Christ has responsibility far beyond that. And so I think this is a great opportunity. I understand not all of you may be faith-based, but I'm pretty sure all of you have churches, in your network, or, who want to be supportive, or, who are in your community. And so what mothers need is to be embedded in a family of people who are going to care for them long term, exactly as Shay said. So this is a great opportunity to find ways for those mothers to be embraced and surrounded by, people who are safe, places that are safe, the child care, and again, it's a bigger ask than just like having the resource, because if your moms go there and they feel like they're being treated as a project, or they feel, being looked at sideways, it's going to be a problem. So you need to do training on both ends. It needs to be welcoming places. But yeah, those moms need a safe place to grow and experience God's love, to learn and grow spiritually, to know that there's somebody they can call when they're stressed out, somebody who needs to pick up their kid from daycare if they're at work. And so those systems of support may be outside the scope of what your job description is, but please work on pulling the church in, because that is exactly what that's how the church grew in the early days of, Christianity in Rome, because the church took in people and made families that nobody wanted.
I love what you guys have said about consent and empowering women. And I think that plays so much into the adoption conversation, because we don't want to coerce parenting and we don't want to coerce adoption. So really giving women informed choices, I think, is what's so exciting about what her plan can help do, because we have adoption resources, we have parenting resources, and we have post-adoption support. And so regardless of the situation that your client might be in, we really hope you tap into the network, because what we're all saying here today is we each have a part to play in that body of Christ, or in that social service care safety net, as we often say. So I just love the idea of us learning together, and whether that means you find out a great program to refer to that will deal with financial literacy and some of the other issues that have come up, and work readiness, or maybe you do feel called to undergo this training and start one of these Chalmers programs as a part of your existing organization. So whether you end up learning how to refer, or whether you end up bringing this in-house as an added service, we think this is just a really valuable conversation to have. So a question here, can someone reach out to you? How can we get you to give some of this training again to other local communities or churches? And how can we also get your help just in terms of building diversity in our own organization, so that we have a respect for our different cultures, but also our individual experiences as unique human beings? How can we hold all of that together and get your help as we're doing it?
Well, our email address is on the slide that you'll get to give out. And I'll reiterate again, like, this is talking about this topic in this way is not something that Shay and I do all the time. This is something that is, just a treat for us to be able to bring in kind of some of our cultural ideas. I'm going to tell you, wherever you are, there are some amazing Black women who know your context, who know your city, who have a history and a story. And so I would say, make sure that you are connecting with churches and the service providers who don't look like you or might not be from your denomination, or, like there's probably some folks who can do exactly what Shay and I did in your community. But yes, there is our email, usprograms@chalmers.org, is in that final slide if you want to, kind of talk more about how to access our programs, or how our programs can kind of help be one of the steps that you're taking along your journey with moms.
All right, well, I know some people might have to go, but Shay, I want to give you an opportunity since you were reading all the questions. Do you want to answer any others that have come to you that really are standing out?
There was one question. I think I saw it. I think it might have been in the chat. It said something about what would we as African American women would want white women to know? I think
Yes, yes. As
was that
moms
the
of
right
color,
question?
what do you wish that white moms knew? Yes.
Number one, that we are more alike than we are different.
Hmm.
And that there are African American women in your city who is longing to connect with you. And for you not to be afraid to connect to a woman that doesn't look like you, that may not have your pedigree, that may not have your upbringing, that may not have your lived experiences, but because we are image bearers of Christ and because we are sisters in the body of Christ, we are missing a piece of God when we don't connect with one another. A vital piece. And that's something that I share in all of the groups that I talk to. If you're an image bearer of Christ, and I am too, if I'm not experiencing God through you, I'm missing a piece of God. And so that's what I would share. Yeah.
Wow. Geraldine, any closing thoughts?
I saw that question too. And so I would just acknowledge that, just understand that when you see things that don't make sense to you, try not to judge the whys, and try to dig into the what's, or what's behind the whys behind the what's that you see. Like, why would you buy your child that? Why would you be spending money on that? Why would you say that? Why are you, just understand that there's a lot more complexity underneath that you may be missing if you don't develop those relationships and talk. So take baby steps to try to build those relationships. You can't jump into stuff until trust is built, but do acknowledge, like, we are living different realities. We are the same on the inside, as Shay said, but my experience as an African-American mother is not the same as the experience that a white mother has, in terms of how safe I feel like my children are, the way people are going to receive my children, the way that they're going to be disciplined or handled by schools. And so, like, just know that there's often a sense, a protective layer that we have to get through to build through that trust. And just know it's not personal. It's just that we're living different realities sometimes.
Yeah. This was great. Oh my goodness. I could stay and talk to this audience for hours. Oh, it's so
you
good.
have been such a blessing to us. This is just really a record-breaking Power Lunch in more ways than one. Thank you all so much for attending. As we mentioned, we will be sending out the recording and some of the links of the resources that have come up. If you have any questions, or you're looking for any resources, or want a connection with Geraldine and Shay, look out for that email that's coming to your inboxes. Please fill out the survey and give us more ideas for the future. Stay tuned for news on next month's material or legal support Power Lunch, and anytime contact us at info@herplan.org. Thank you all. God bless.
Thank you, ladies. You've been wonderful.
Bye-bye. Have a great week.